both the nonprofit sector and specifically for outdoor youth programs. And to give everybody a little bit of a background here, hang on, the slides aren't advancing. Give me just a minute, pardon me. There we go. To give you a little bit of a background, if some of you aren't familiar with TYO, it is a recently launched online learning community that was funded by a couple national funders, the North Face REI, and a couple foundations that were very specifically interested in outdoor youth development work, with the idea that there were literally thousands and thousands of folks across the country that were emerging to build and develop programs to get kids outside. From a funder perspective, they were getting inundated with grant requests, upwards of 5,000 each year from folks all over the country. And they wanted, beyond writing checks, wanted to build a platform that would help people all over the country get the tools, the resources, everything they needed to continue to build and develop programs. So with that, TYO was developed. There's 4 founding partners of TYO: the Sierra Club, the Children in Nature Network, the Outdoor Foundation, and Outdoor Outreach. And I've been leading this initiative with those founding partners for the last couple of years, and am currently the executive director of TYO. In my past life, I founded an organization based in Southern California called Outdoor Outreach about 16 years ago, that is an outdoor youth program specifically for inner city at-risk kids. And it grew to a pretty decent size, $1 million budget, serving about 1,000 kids, running over 500 trips, hundreds of after-school program days each year. In my career, I've raised over $10 million for programs getting kids outdoors, and kind of have a unique perspective as somebody who started a nonprofit in my apartment 16 years ago to running $1 million organization. So what we're really going to focus on today is mostly kind of a high-level overview of fundraising for for this sector. And when we first started TYO, really and did a lot of market research, and we're asking folks a lot of questions about what kind of support they needed. The number one thing that we heard across the board was they wanted support with fund development, fundraising. So like I said, I'm just going to give some real basic overview information about fundraising for the sector, and we can get into a lot more detail with the Q&A at the end if you'd like. So I'm going to first start and just talk very broadly and talk about revenue sources for nonprofits. And what you're seeing here are kind of the 5 main revenue streams that nonprofits can access: foundations, corporate, individual donations, doing special events, and fee-for-service revenue. Now, the way that you should be thinking about this is sort of where you're going to be getting the best return on investment. Now, out of these buckets, last year, 2014, there was $358 billion in charitable giving in the United States. Most of that coming from individuals, 72% from individuals, 15% from foundation, 5% from corporate. The individual number is a bit skewed because almost a third of all charitable giving goes to churches and religious organizations, coming from individuals. So that's a little bit skewed, but still, it's I think really important to note that most of the funding comes from individual donors. Now, saying that, coming back to my point about the return on investment and where you are going to get your biggest return on investment of time and energy as you're fundraising is from foundations. You can spend a few hours writing a grant proposal to a foundation and get a 10, 20, $50,000 grant. It's the best ROI there is. From corporate giving, there's sort of two avenues. One is larger corporate and businesses that will have a structured giving program that you can, in a similar way to the foundation, sort of write a grant. They have very specific areas that they're looking to fund, research those, and get after them. And then your smaller businesses, mostly regionally, that will have unstructured giving programs that you'll have to sort of build relationships for. Now, when I mentioned individuals being, the primary source of revenue, that's where you're going to be able to build the your most stable revenue stream. Now, the challenge with that is it's a little bit of a slow burn and takes a long time to develop those relationships. And you need to create a real focused individual donor campaign where you're working on developing those individual donors, starting them out with $20 donations, and each year cultivating them so that they increase their gifts. And at $50, $100, it's hard for those smaller donations to add up to be really significant towards your budget. But it is something that you want to focus on, especially as you're starting out, that you can slowly build over the years and develop relationships. Now, special events are something that are more increasingly best practice in the nonprofit world. People are moving away. The reason is that it really is the worst return on investment. They're very time intensive to put on special events. And they're also expensive, So more and more, especially once you start factoring your staff time, your volunteers' time, all the time and energy, oftentimes you're sort of netting out, in a lot of ways, even at a loss sometimes. And there's the added benefit of the sort of community development and the communication and marketing and sort of spreading and engaging the community that happens with special events. But on their own, as a fundraising mechanism, it's a lot of time, a lot of energy, and you're not usually going to get a great return on investment. And the last one is, especially in the outdoor youth development world, is a real solid revenue stream, and this is charging for services. So this is either if you're, let's say, have a program that's working with kids and charging a little bit of a fee to the kids, to the families that you're serving, or if you're serving a underserved, under-resourced population, inner city, at-risk population, potentially partnering with the agencies that you're serving, be them schools or after-school programs, juvenile programs, state and county services, and creating contracts and a fee-for-service program where you're charging them to work with the kids. And so ideally, you're going to be working all of these different revenue streams and creating as much diversification as possible. So as you're looking at approaching funders in your community, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is, and one of the really great things about our sector and our space is it's got a few different outcome areas that funders are interested in. And as you're researching funders, funders are focused on, usually hyper-focused on very specific outcome areas. So some may just be medical research, some may be veterans or disabilities or education or any lots of different areas. They're usually hyper-focused, and there's three areas where getting kids outside really kind of zero in on. And the primary one is youth development, and there's lots of foundations, corporate programs that are really focused on supporting charities and causes that are serving kids and that are having really solid outcomes. that are focused around helping kids, and that's going to be probably the biggest sort of outcome area that most funders are interested in, where you'll get sort of most of your revenue and interest coming from on all levels, corporate, foundation, individual as well, and telling that story about how you're impacting kids through the outdoors. The second one, and this is something that has emerged in the last, in the last little bit, is there are quite a few funders that are really focused on health and wellness in the community, healthcare funders, and increasingly they're, especially as the sort of obesity, diabetes epidemics have really kind of skyrocketed in the last number of years. A lot of outdoor programs are getting a lot of funding and traction around this idea that exposing kids to the outdoors, creating long-term, healthy, active lifestyles by exposing kids to the outdoors and outdoor lifestyles is getting increasing traction with that funder sector. And really the basic pitch is, people that are, the general population that is in, PE programs and, mostly team and ball sports, once they graduate and become adults, most of them don't continue with those activities long term. But if you look at folks that are climbers and hikers and paddlers and, sort of outdoor passionate folks, those are lifelong endeavors that they keep active and healthy for their entire life. So again, there's increasing opportunity to get funding from those funders that are focused on health and wellness. And the last one, also, that's been emerging in the last number of years is going after environmental funders. And funders who traditionally have been mostly focused on conservation and environmental initiatives are now really seeing the need to fund programs to get kids outside to create the next generation of environmental stewards, and are increasingly becoming aware of the fact that the majority of folks out there, are not, if we want to create let me back up a little bit. If we are, if you look at the present sort of environmental issues that we're focused with, now there's an entire generation that doesn't really have any really solid connection to the natural world. We're really going to be hooped in a generation as those folks are now, making policy and, stepping into the world of adulthood. So again, another real solid, positive narrative stream. So now, moving on, the next really important part is really focus on telling your story and creating your narrative and approaching funders in a way that is compelling. And that's really one of the number one things that we've been hearing at TYO from a number of folks is people really struggling, sharing and telling their story in a compelling way. And for most folks, a lot of what we're hearing is they're entering the field, they're starting programs, they're building organization, and their narrative starts something like, oh, I really love the outdoors, it's totally changed my life, it's what I'm most passionate about, I know how much it can help kids, and so I've started this program to help kids get outdoors. So, which is great and amazing, but if you are trying to get funders from funding from a highly competitive field, foundations, corporations, you need to create a much more solid narrative. Telling both quantitative, qualitative data, and really spending the time to research, know your audience, tailor a narrative, based on the funder, their guidelines, their interest. Most funders will be very, very specific about what they're asking for in their RFP. An RFP is a request for proposals, and their sort of guidelines is they're asking asking for nonprofits to approach them. So the best place to start is creating what you're seeing here is sort of a boilerplate grant proposal. And this is something that you'll be able to pull from to, to apply to different funders. And you can use it for lots of different streams. And then, some funders you'll be able to just sort of, slap their name on it and send this boilerplate to them. Other ones you'll have to, and get specific with the format that they're looking for. And there's 6 primary components of a good boilerplate proposal that I'll run you through really quickly. The first you'll see is having just an organization overview that you tell a little bit about your program, your project, your organization, who you're serving, some basic metrics, your mission, that sort of thing. The second thing you want to get into is really defining really getting at what problem you're solving. And this is where it's really important to probably do some research and find out specifically, and really footnote exactly if it's inner city kids or kids with disability, and really paint a picture for what you're trying to do. This is really one of the most important what you're doing. The next bit is you'll get into a section that has very specific, goals and objectives for your project. A section where you'll outline in detail, your programs and services, what you're doing, how you're doing it, what the model is, followed by a section that has very specific, what your impacts, how you're evaluating the program, what kind of results you're going to be getting. Again, you're going to be competing with a lot of organizations out there doing a lot of great work, and it's really important to help with really solid, like I said, both qualitative and quantitative data. And then finish the proposal, with the very specific, or what the money is going to be going to, et cetera, et cetera. And when in the TYO system, and I'll spend a little bit of time later, all of these, sort of boilerplate documents, budgets, LOIs are all in there. An LOI, if you don't know, is a letter of intent, and you will have some funders that will ask for that. But you also have some that will ask for an LOI, a letter of intent, which is basically a 1 or 2 pager that is in a briefer way, telling a little bit about your organization and why you think you're a good fit for that foundation. So you can then apply to a more formal grant. Additionally, a couple other things, 1 or 2 page overview, and here's an example from one of our partners, Outdoor Outreach, of a PDF that you can create that's got some nice visuals, bullet points about who you are, what you're doing, some success stories. And this is something that you can either just drop in the mail, something that as you're reaching out to folks, you can attach as a PDF. And it's a piece like this as well. Now, the next, kind of real important step in this process is funders in your community. And one of the things that we heard, especially from the TYO founding sponsors, REI, North Base, that are big national grantors, is again, they've got folks all over the country that are kind of inundating them with grant requests, and there are very few national funders that will support smaller regional programs. So really, where you're going to want to shift most of your energy is finding the funders in your community that will support your project. Most of the is going to come directly from an example. The organization I founded, Outdoor Outreach, it's got close to a $1 million budget. Over 90% of the funding comes directly from, the foundations in the community that the programs are being run. That's where the interest is. That's where people want to support. So finding those funders in your community is part of the process. And one of the pieces of content that we have in TYO is this grant research guide. And this just kind of outlines how you go about doing this. There's usually a resource center at a community foundation or a nonprofit support agency that may have a library where you can go and do research. So that's one. And again, you're going to be able to find those funders that are, you can do keyword searches on outdoors, environment, youth development, those kind of things, and find those funders in your community. There's a number of listservs that you can get on from the Foundation Center. And I should mention the Foundation Center is an online resource, and there's a link right here to it, that you can go and do online searches from your community, both nationally, regionally, all over the place, and it's an amazing resource center. And they were one of our huge partners in building out all the fund development tools on TYO. They have a listserv. Normally, most regions, counties, cities will have listservs as well that you can get on that will send you RFPs from funders as they're looking for different opportunities. There's some national publications that you can look at that list funding opportunities, like the Chronicle of Philanthropy, the Nonprofit Times. There's a few others. Really, what we found is probably the best source of finding solid funding leads is looking at other nonprofits in your community. So ones that they may not be direct competitors, but maybe an after-school center serving youth or an environmental organization. And you can look at their, at their websites, at their annual reports, look at some of their, excuse me, I'm reading one of your questions. Look at their different avenues, and you can see other folks that are funding similar causes, and that's a great way to find additional funders. So let's see here. Excuse me. On to the next slide. Let's see, the slide's not working. Oh, there. So what I'm going to do now is get basically directly, I'm going to show you, we're going to spend some time in the TYO platform. And and to access the fundraising resources, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can come right here to the topics page, click on the fund development icon, and it'll open up here immediately the 5 highest rated pieces of content that are in the platform. If you click on see more, it'll go to the content library and do a filtered search on all of the content associated with fundraising. So really there's a lot of amazing stuff. There's some webinars on basics. There are more focused on budgets or grants. There's some videos from experts that'll give you some tips and tricks. Lots of different budgets that you can use, fund development plans, sample boilerplate grant proposals, you name it. Just about everything that you would need is here in the system. And for a more focused look, you can come here to the learning path. So if you're not familiar with the system, in addition to the resource library, we have these functional learning paths for just about every topic that we had our subject matter experts create. So there's one specifically for fund development that is basically a curated linking together of those content pieces in a way that's sort of a fundraising 101. And it's bucketed into about a half a dozen sections. The first one is focused on fundraising planning and creating a fundraising plan for your project or organization. And there's a webinar that the Foundation Center put on around fundraising planning, and there is a sample fund development plan that you can use as a template and cut and paste from and create your own fund development plan. All right there. There's a fundraising calendar that'll a template that you can keep track of all your fundraising activities. That's all right there. Now, the next section is focused on research, and beyond that guide that I showed you initially, there's a couple webinars from the Foundation Center about how to use that Foundation Center tool and some basics around seeking grants. There's also a template here for a prospect worksheet as you're looking and doing research to kind of fill in and find funders in your community. We do have a whole section on grant writing with a couple webinars, both on the basics of writing proposals and one on budgeting. We have a sample boilerplate grant proposal that has raised over $5 million. Cut and paste, use it. Use it as a guide. A sample LOI, what I explained earlier, as something that is a bit simpler. There's a whole section on corporate giving and going after corporate donors, and a lot of different materials that are focused specifically on corporate donations, going after corporate donors, creating volunteer programs for corporate partners, things like that. Next section is all about developing individual donors and what that's like, and some outreach and marketing materials like an annual report that you would use to send to individual donors. A sample solicitation letter that's a year-end ask that you would do for individual donors. A sample newsletter, different communication tools. And we also have here a whole section on managing your fundraising program. And this is, specifically, there's a really cool flow chart here that'll walk you through the whole process of grant submissions and how to keep track of everything. There's a template for a spreadsheet that'll allow you to keep track of your submissions and the grants that you've gotten, the grants you were denied, things like that. And then a whole slew of sample acknowledgement letters for when you do receive gifts from individuals, foundations, corporate in-kind donations that you can use as a template as well. We've also got a bunch of different videos here that you can watch from some experts in the field and some sample budgets that you could also use as well. So that's it, sort of in a nutshell. I wanted to keep it at a half an hour and try to just give all the real quick and dirty basics. So if something wasn't clear, if you'd like more detail, whatever you'd like, I think now is the time that we can go for questions. So if you want, I think the way that we're going to do this is if you can raise your hand if you have a question. We will, Severia will call on you and unmute you so you can ask your question. Looks like
so,
Randy.
Yeah, Randy asked about how to logging into PathGather. Do you want to show that?
Logging into PathGather, 2IO, or the Foundation Center? I didn't see the question.
Sorry, so Randy wants to know, how do we log into PathGather? And Randy, the first thing to do is to create an account on 2IO. And so when you go to the 2IO homepage, mytyo.org, there's an option to sign up or log in. And when you log in, that's how you get into PathGather.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose one of those options. And then Chris, Kyle is asking, do you think there is value in taking a grant writing course through community college, or are these skills easily or better learned in the field? Good question.
Yeah, I would say if you're brand new to it, basic helpful, and will definitely shorten your learning curve. And if there are some immediate resources available and you're just getting started, it's a great idea. Once you get some of the basic information, and again, you'll get a lot of what you're going to sort of take in that course. You'll see here on TYO with the boilerplate grants and budget sort of basics. So there's enough information in the TYO platform where you could really just kind of start going for it. Otherwise, the more online courses, take local courses at community college, that certainly helps.
And you can also, if you raise your hand, we can unmute you, so you can ask your question in person too if you don't want to type it into the question field. All right.
Okay, Jenny.
All right, you should be unmuted, Jenny.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, thank you so much for this. This is incredibly useful. So one of the things that I'm finding for myself personally is I do really well when I'm sort of held accountable to things or have deadlines, like this web specific time and I had to be here, whereas if it was a recording, I just worry that I'm not going to actually complete it with everything else that happens, and that is on me in terms of just my own time management and prioritization and all of that. But I was just curious if there's a way on the platform itself to sort of interact with other people who are innovating in the same sort of like, hey, who else wants to do the fun development path? Do we want to just like hold each other accountable and like set weekly goals and say like, hey, we'll each on the planning, and then maybe we can like check in on the platform, and it doesn't have to be anything super formal, but it just might help offer support for each other. So just curious if there was a way to do that on the platform.
Yeah. So if we're looking specifically at the fund development path here. So these are all the folks that have started the taking. So when you for everybody else, when you come into the platform and you can, we've made the platform, pretty interactive, where you can actually start not only a path will end up in your profile in your queue, but also very, specific topic content as well. So you can, so let's say I want to, take a fundraising plan. You can save it to your queue. You can share it with somebody else. You can endorse it. So with all of that, you can certainly see and hopefully connect with some other folks here in the platform, and you could just look at some other folks that have started this and see on development path, are you getting started? Or you may have some colleagues in the field saying, hey, let's do it together, start the path together, hold each other accountable, just like you were saying. I think.
And can you send message? I'm just looking, I just clicked on somebody's name who is also taking this course. Can I send? Is it?
Yeah, so you can basically, there's a couple things that you can do. Is you can either come here and here's your profile, and I can directly
Oh, I see. Perfect.
email you.
Okay.
Or the other thing that you can do is there's a discussion thread that you can use where, let me go back to the path. So for example, you could, for every content piece in the system and every path, there's a discussion forum. So you could come in here and leave a comment, and what you do is you go at, let's say Jenny, you can go at Jenny, and you can start, and when you do at Jenny there, and it gives a pull down,
Right.
it will directly message you within the system and give Jenny a notification.
Nice.
Show up in her notification. So you can do that with different folks, and you can do that for, like I said, a path. You can do that for a specific content piece. So here is this template for a grant log, let's say, and you could say, let's say you have a colleague at Click Severia, dive into this content piece with you. What do you think? How do you do it? And she's going to get a notification about it.
Great. And get emails about that, or
you go to your settings, there will be a daily email that will go out, and you can set it to where every day you'll get, so
great.
It will send every day at the end of the day saying you got 2 notifications, one from Jenny, one from Severia, and you can turn these off if you don't want to get those emails, or you can make them active, and that happens here in the settings.
Perfect. Really, really helpful.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on here?
I was just going to add, Jenny, too. There's going to be a gathering. There's a fund development gathering. And so gathering is a functionality that we're sort of still in the process of really getting up and running. It does exist within the platform, but that could be another place to have those conversations around fundraising specifically, because it's a little bit more conversation-based. The recording for this webinar, we'll put it in there. We'll probably put the fund development path in there. So that could be another area or place that you might be able to start those conversations and create sort of a peer group within TYO to talk about fundraising.
Perfect. I just joined the gathering. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. Well, unless there's any other questions, we're gonna sign off now. And in the future, you can always ping Severia if you've got any specific questions, and we've got a whole team here that's ready to support you in anything you need help with. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for joining.